What's up, guys? So today we're moving on to lesson 6.2, which is dealing with some more triangle stuff. But what we're looking at is congruent triangles using side angle side and side side side. So we're going to be looking at two triangles and using information given to determine if those two triangles are congruent to each other. Okay? So let's look at our key points here. Let's move into our examples and let's get going here. All right, so let's look at our first one here, guys. So we have our side angle side, and I want you guys to make sure and look at the order of how this is written. I have a side, I have an angle, and I have a side. So let's look at our definition. So if two sides and the included angle, so that means if I have two sides that are meeting at each other, that angle that is created by those two congruent sides, that's the one I'm talking about whenever I say included. So if two sides and the included angle of one triangle are congruent to the corresponding parts of another triangle, the triangles are congruent to each other, okay? So right now let's go ahead and look at this. I'm gonna kind of color code it so we can see it. So right now if we look, I have side AB and it has 1 mark. Look over here, I have side RS and it has 1 mark. I put that in red here, okay? I have AC, and it has 2 marks. I have QR, and it has 2 marks. So right now, you see the red, those are my two sides that are congruent to each other. So now if you look, 2 mark and 1 mark form angle A, 2 mark and 1 mark form side R there, or angle R, okay? And if you look, the angle that is included right here, are congruent to each other. So again, I have two sides, 1 angle, 1 angle. So side, angle, side, side, angle, side. So since these two are congruent by side, angle, side, that means everything in the triangle is now congruent. So the way we can put this is angle AC and QR are congruent, so AB and RS are congruent. So that means CB and QS are congruent because the two triangles are congruent by side, angle, side. And then that means the same thing. So angle B and S and C and Q would also be congruent because the two triangles are congruent to each other. So if I was to actually write the congruent statement, meaning the congruent similarity or the congruent triangle statement, I would then say triangle, I'm going to put ABC is going to be equal to triangle, and then I need to list out the same thing. So A is going to go with R, okay? B is going to go with, it looks like S in this instance. And then C is going to go with Q in this instance. So right now, ABC is going to be equal to RSQ. All right, so now look at the next one. So I have side, side, side. So just like side, angle, side, we are now doing side, side, side. So it says, if 3 sides of one triangle are congruent to 3 sides of another triangle, then the triangles are congruent to each other. So that means if the two triangles are congruent to each other, that means all of their corresponding parts are going to be congruent to each other as well, meaning all the angles are going to be congruent as well. So let's go ahead and look at this. So using a different color, if I look, I have side BC here has 1 mark. Looks like side ZY has 1 mark. So those are congruent to each other, okay? Let's use a different color. So it looks like side AB here has 2 marks. So it looks like XY has 2 marks, okay? And now AC has 3 marks, and side XZ has 3 marks. So since all 3 sides of triangle ABC and all the sides of XYZ are congruent to each other, then that means all of their congruent parts are also congruent to each other because of the side, side, side theorem. So if all 3 sides of a triangle are congruent, that means everything else of the triangle is also congruent to each other. So if I was to write the congruent statement here, I would then say triangle ABC is equal to, and I have to make sure I put all the congruent parts together. So triangle, so if I look, angle A here is made up of the 3 side and the 2 side. So the 3 side and the 2 side makes up X here. So I'm going to put X first, okay? The next one, if I look up B, is made up of the 2 side and the 1 side. So the 2 side and the 1 side is Y, so Y. And then the last one obviously is going to be Z here. Because the reason I do this is because side AB and XZ, so AB and XZ are the same, or XY, sorry, XY are the same. BC and YZ, so BC and YZ, and then AC and XZ, so AC and XZ. So it lists out the correct way, and you gotta make sure you write that congruent statement the right way. Okay, so let's take this information, let's move on to examples, and we're going to try and determine if 2 triangles are congruent either by side angle side or side side side. All right, so on example number 1 it says, are the 2 triangles congruent? If so, we need to write the congruent statement. So right now if you look, I don't necessarily have any of my angles congruent. So I learned 2 different ways. I learned side angle side and I've learned side side side. So I don't necessarily have any angles that are congruent to each other. So I can't do it by side angle side. So let's go ahead and look and try and figure out if side 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 is. I have angle GH has 2, angle HI has 2, so that matches, that's one side. Angle GJ and angle JI are congruent, so that's 2 sides that are congruent. So now let's look at my third side. So my third side, HJ, on both triangles is the same exact side. So right now, this side is going to be congruent to each other. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that means all 3 sides of my triangles are congruent. So that means the 2 triangles are congruent by side, side, side. Okay? And so now I need to write my congruent statement. So let's go ahead and start out with this triangle. So I have let's start out with G, H, and J. Let's go ahead and do that. So I have triangle G, H, and J is equal to, now that I know they're congruent, and so I got to list out the congruent angles with those. So right now I have the 3 side and the 2 side make up G. So over here the 3 side and the 2 side make up I. So triangle I. H, the 2 side and the 1 side make up H. So the 2 side and the 1 side make up H here too. So H is going to be the second letter, and the only letter left is going to be J. So that means in this instance, G is congruent to I, H is congruent to H, and J is congruent to J because those are the same thing. Okay? Same thing with the sides. G and H, I and H, so G and H, I and H are congruent. H and J, so HJ and HJ is the same thing. GJ, GJ, and IJ are the same thing. So listing it out by the congruent statement, or if they give you the congruent statement, gives you all of this stuff so you know that they're congruent to each other. Okay? Let's move over to example number 2. All right, so on example number 2, it says, are the 2 triangles congruent? If so, we need to write the congruent statement. So let's go ahead and look. I have 2 sides that are congruent. So I have PM and LN. Those are congruent to each other, so that's one side. And then it looks like I have an angle. So angle NLM and angle PML are congruent to each other. So that's an angle. So now if we look, side angle, I don't have necessarily another side or 3 sides, so I can't use side, side, side. But if I look here, LM is the same side on both triangles. So technically speaking, that's going to be the same measurement on both triangles. So since that's the same side, that means this side right now is going to end up being your third side. So if I look, I have side angle side, so 1 angle 2, 1 angle 2. So that's going to be the same order. So that means these 2 triangles are going to be congruent by side angle side, because the angle is in between the 2 congruent sides here, okay? So let's go ahead and look. Now that I know the 2 triangles are congruent, I need to write the congruent statement. So let's just go ahead and write, I'm going to do LMN here. So I'm going to do triangle LMN. And then now I basically need to write the congruent angles to those, okay? So here we go. So if I look, angle L. So it looks like angle L is right now is going to be congruent to angle M here. So L and M right here. So I'm going to put M first over here. So triangle M. Triangle LMN. If I look, angle L here has this angle here. And so now this angle right here is going to be M. So M goes first. So now I'm looking at angle M on this triangle right here, which is going to be this angle right here. And if I look, this angle right here is going to be angle L, so L goes next. And then N is the angle down here, so P here. So right there, so L is congruent to M is congruent to L again, and N is congruent to P, and then the sides end up matching as well. So there goes my congruent statement. So make sure ordering it the correct way and ordering the congruent parts together and showing that it's congruent is very key here, okay? So let's jump over to example number 3. Okay, so on example number 3, it's asking what other information is needed to prove that the two triangles are going to be congruent by side, angle, side. So what that means is I need two sides congruent, I need an angle, and then I need another two sides that are congruent to each other of the two triangles, okay? So let's go and look at an example here. So right now, if you look, from H to I has 1 mark, from I to G has 1 mark, so that means that those two sides are going to be congruent, okay? And if you look, I have this line here and this line here crossing each other. So I know vertical angles are going to be congruent to each other. So that tells me this angle right here is going to be congruent to that angle right there. So I got my side, I have my angle, now I just need a third side. And there's nothing there to tell me that these two sides are going to be congruent, because if I look, I need the side that is going to be included, or that has the angle included. So if I end up using this side, that angle is not a part of this side. So I have to use the other side that is included with that angle. So that means this side, which is JI, would need to be congruent to IE over here. So that would be the third side, or the second side that would need to be congruent here. So in order for me to prove that these two triangles are congruent by side, angle, side, side JI would have to be congruent to side IE. So JI would have to be congruent to IE in order for those two triangles to be congruent by side, angle, side. So that's just me finding the third piece of the puzzle to make this work, okay? All right, guys, so now it comes to the challenge question. Again, this is kind of a gauge to see if you're ready to move on, okay? Try the challenge question. If you can do it on your own, no problems. Come let me see your answer, see if you got it right. Then you can move on to your skill check. If you're having trouble with this, you're welcome to go to the quizzes or the booklet that I've created to go do some practice before move on to your skill check. Or you can just call me over and I can help you out. But all in all, good luck with your skill check. Good luck with your work. If you're needing help, please call me over. Good luck.